She had seen him countless times before she ever knew his name. Every morning, at the exact same hour, the bell above the cafe door would ring softly, and the old man would walk in with slow steps that carried both age and stories no one had yet heard. His routine never changed. He would pick the corner table near the window, set his hat down gently on the chair beside him, and order the same thing, a cup of warm tea and a small bun. He never asked for anything more. He never troubled anyone. He simply sat there, looking out the window as if watching the world move on without him. The waitress, Anna, had started noticing the little details. How he always smiled at her, even when his hands trembled while lifting the teacup. How he always left a small tip, even though she suspected he didn't have much. How his eyes held a quiet loneliness, the kind that didn't cry out loud but lived in the silent spaces of a person's soul. She often wondered about him. Who he was. What his story might be. Why he came every day to sit alone in a cafe where everyone else came in pairs or groups, laughing, talking, living. But he always remained polite, gentle, and soft-spoken. When she asked him once how he was doing, he simply smiled and said, "I'm still grateful to see the sun each day. That's enough for me." Those words stayed with her. In a world rushing forward, chasing noise, success, and loud dreams, here was a man who found joy simply in being alive. Something about him made her feel a kind of warmth she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way his eyes softened when he smiled. Maybe it was the gratitude he carried in every breath. One quiet morning, as the cafe was almost empty, the old man walked in slower than usual. His steps looked heavier, his shoulders more bent, as though the night had taken something from him. Anna approached him with her usual cheerful greeting, but today, he struggled to return the smile. He sat down, exhaled deeply, and whispered, the usual, please. But when she placed the tea and bun on his table, she noticed something new, a faint sadness resting in his eyes, deeper than anything she had seen before. She wanted to ask him what was wrong, but she didn't want to intrude or burden him. He ate very slowly that day. He looked out the window longer than usual. His fingers shivered a little more. When he finished, he stood up, thanked her gently, and placed his usual small tip on the table. It felt like a goodbye. That feeling stayed with her even after he walked out the door. Later, as she cleaned his table, she found nothing unusual, just the empty cup, the crumbs of the bun, and a faint trace of loneliness left behind. She didn't know why, but her heart ached a little. The next morning, when the bell didn't ring at its usual time, she kept glancing at the door. She told herself he might just be running late. Maybe the weather slowed him down. Maybe he had errands to run. But another hour passed, and then another. And for the first time since she had started working there, his chair remained empty. His corner sat untouched, still holding the memory of his presence. Something inside her insisted she should do something, something small, something kind, something human. She didn't know if he would return the next day, or if he would ever come back at all. But she wanted him to know that someone noticed him, that someone appreciated his gentle spirit. So she quietly paid for his meal in the system. Then she folded a napkin, placed it neatly on his table, and wrote the words that had been sitting in her heart since the day she first saw him smile. Thank you for reminding us that gentle souls still exist. She didn't sign her name. She didn't expect anything in return. She just wanted him to feel, even for a moment, that he wasn't invisible. That someone saw the goodness in him. That night, she went home with an unusual sense of peace. She imagined him walking in the next morning, reading the napkin, and smiling the soft smile she had come to cherish. She imagined that maybe it would warm his heart the way his presence had warmed hers. But the next morning, the bell still didn't ring. Instead, around mid-morning, the cafe door opened slowly, and a woman stepped inside. She looked exhausted, as if she had spent the entire night fighting tears. Clutched in her hand was a small letter. When her gaze fell on Anna, she walked toward her with uncertain steps. "Are you Anna?" she asked in a quiet, trembling voice. "Yes," Anna replied, confused and worried. The woman took a deep breath and handed her the letter. "My father, he used to come here every day. He spoke a lot about the girl at the cafe who always treated him with kindness. He asked me to deliver this to you." Anna's hands shook as she accepted the letter. The woman paused, and her voice broke as she continued, "He passed away last night. Peacefully, and happy. Happier than I had seen him in years." Anna felt her heart drop. The woman wiped her tears and added, "Before he passed, he told me that someone in this cafe reminded him that the world still had kindness left in it. When he came home yesterday, he had a napkin in his pocket. It was the last thing he held. Anna's breath caught in her throat. The napkin, the simple sentence she had written without knowing its weight. With trembling fingers, she opened the letter. The handwriting was shaky but filled with warmth. My dear girl, thank you for the kindness you showed an old man whose life had grown quiet and lonely. Your smile gave me more comfort than you may ever understand. Yesterday, when I read your message on the napkin, I felt something I had not felt in many years, seen, valued, and remembered. It was the perfect closing chapter to my story. With gentle gratitude, a grateful old man, tears filled Anna's eyes. She pressed the letter to her chest, unable to speak. The woman gave her a soft, grateful smile, then quietly walked out, leaving Anna standing in the middle of the cafe, holding the final words of a man she had known only through tea, a bun, and silent kindness. She walked to the old man's table and sat down for the first time in his chair. She looked out the window, seeing the world the way he must have seen it, quietly, gently, with a heart full of gratitude. Tears streamed down her face, but she wasn't crying from sadness alone. She cried because she understood something precious. Even small acts of kindness can ripple through a person's life in ways we can't imagine. From that day on, she made it her mission to notice people, the lonely ones, the quiet ones, the ones who sit in silence hoping the world still has a place for them. She smiled more. She listened more. She asked people how they were doing and truly meant it. Because she realized that sometimes, the biggest impact you can make isn't in grand gestures or loud declarations. Sometimes, it's in the smallest things, a warm smile, a paid meal, a handwritten note that tells someone their existence matters. The cafe eventually framed the napkin and the letter, placing them on the wall above the old man's favorite table. Customers would often stop and read it, touched by the story. Many said it reminded them to be kinder, gentler, more human. And every morning, when Anna walked into the cafe, she would glance at that corner table with a quiet smile. She didn't see an empty chair anymore. She saw a reminder that a simple act of kindness had given a lonely man the gift of leaving this world with a full heart. His story became a silent message to everyone who entered. Kindness doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need applause. It just needs to be real. And sometimes, a gentle soul sitting alone with tea and a bun can teach us more about humanity than 1,000 speeches ever could.